have amongst us His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu from Govardhan Eco Village, which is a little outside of Mumbai. It's a very beautiful place. Whenever you next visit Mumbai, do visit the Govardhan Eco Village. I've had the good opportunity to visit there a few times. So, without much ado, we are having the second session on the Nectar of Instructions. As Jugal Prabhu was explaining, that it'll be nice that all of you have a notebook with you and you could make some very nice points that come through from this presentation. Few housekeeping rules. Kindly keep your videos and yourselves muted during the course of the discourse that Prabhu is going to take us through, which is along with the PowerPoint presentation. And we will have a 1 hour talk by Prabhu. And then at the end of 1 hour, we will have a 30-minute Q&A session. But obviously, we will keep the time because particularly for him, he's in India and it's already about 35 past 8 in the night. So we'll keep the time. We'll try to accommodate as many questions as we can. But we will end the session in 1.5 hours. So let's all, give up Danvat pranams to Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, and let's say the prayers. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu vyaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, over to you.
Thank you. Can I share the screen?
Yes, I'm going to do that right away. Just 1 sec.
Can you also allow me to record the class?
Yes, I will do that too. Just give me, I will have, so you can share the screen. And yeah, you're able to share the screen now. And recording. Just 1 sec. So the recording part, I'm just trying to figure out.
Just at the bottom in my name, just say allow record.
Oh yeah, okay, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done that, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for joining today. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to discuss the nectar of instruction. And today we will discuss how we can adopt principles by which we can all become better devotees and connect with ourselves, with the world, and ultimately with our Lord better. So in the first session, I discussed about the 6 urges and how they affect us. Now we will discuss about in today's session things that affect us positively, affect us negatively. Can we mute the participants, please? Hare Krishna, can we mute the participants?
Yes, I will do so, Prabhu.
Okay.
Yeah, all muted.
Thank you. So let's begin with the second text today. So Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo Niyamagraha Janasangascha laulyamcha shadbhir bhaktir vinashyati. So this first section of the nectar of instruction is talking about how we interact with the world. And it will talk about 6 principles of how interaction with the world can damage our devotion. And the next 6 principles of how we can enhance our devotion. So Atyahara is overeating. Let's look at this. Prayasa is over endeavoring. Prajalpa is talking inappropriate too much. Niyamagraha, we'll discuss all of these one by one. Janasangha and Laulyam. So this is a diagrammatic representation of these 6 factors. Now let's look at Atyahar. I won't discuss much because we discussed that significantly in our discussion on the Jivha and Udaravegam, on the urges of the tongue and the urges of the belly. So Atyahar, ahar is eating, and Atyahar is eating too much. So the previous section analyzed, so there will be some repetition in the first three verses, but the repetition is presenting things from different perspectives. So there it was talking more in terms of the urges that arise within the body and how to deal with them. And here it is talking about specific activities that we do with the body. So that was more of inner urges. This was more of outer actions that we can do or not do. So Atyahara is eating too much. So now, of course, there's a relation that when the urge, when the tongue is uncontrolled, the belly is uncontrolled, we eat too much. That's true, but still there's a different focus. So now, prayasa means over endeavoring. Now, in prayas sometimes means trying, especially in Hindi, but in Sanskrit, prayasa means trying too much, trying excessively. So now we may say, is there something like excessive trying? Sometimes people say that, try till you succeed. Well, that's fine in principle, but everything has to be done in proportion. Suppose somebody endeavors so much for success in a particular field. Even from a material perspective, if somebody becomes obsessed with professional success, they become, say, workaholics. Then as workaholics, they might become successful professionally, but if their family life is in shambles, their marriage is falling apart, their child has started taking drugs, then where is the happiness in their lives? So over endeavor means that we obsess so much with one area of life that we neglect another area of life entirely. And success in one area of life doesn't compensate for failure in another area. So similarly, over endeavor means we lose a sense of proportion. And one way to keep that sense of proportion is to recognize the purpose of life. The purpose of life is actually to expand our consciousness, to realize our immortality, to attain Krishna. So that's why simple living and high thinking, what does it mean? Simplicity does not, unfortunately, what happens is people are today simply living and hardly thinking. Simply living means just going along like programmed machines, doing whatever it takes to live and doing whatever it takes to fulfill the desires that come up because of the world's propaganda. The world glamorizes various objects and we get caught in them. And we are hardly thinking, we don't think about life's ultimate question. What is the purpose of life? So now simplicity, what does it mean? Simplicity does not mean living in deprivation. It does not mean that somebody has to live necessarily in a poverty-stricken condition. But simplicity simply means that we don't complicate our life more than it needs to be. So just like food, we discussed earlier, we all need food to eat. But if we make the whole process of cooking unnecessarily complicated, the whole process of eating unnecessarily extravagant, then that distracts us from many other meaningful things in life. So for all of us, we may have a certain level of financial security or physical comfort or social standing that we may aspire for. And life involves growth. So growth is natural. Just as, say, all of us were just unicellular organisms and we have grown now to address most of us. So we all grow. So like that, we all will aspire to grow in our lives. But cancer is also growth. The problem with cancer is that it is disproportionate and destructive growth. One small set of cells in the body starts growing so much that it starts damaging and destroying the other parts of the body. So similarly, when we do prayasa, our endeavor either for, say, getting wealth or getting a position in society, it becomes so great that it becomes like a cancerous growth that destroys other aspects of our life. So just simplicity means ensuring that we don't complicate our life more than it needs to be. So Atyahara prayasasya. So Atyahara is, I'll discuss this from a slightly different perspective. From the perspective of prayasa, that Atyahara can also be said to be overconsumption. It's not just overeating, but overconsumption. So we can consume sound through our ears, we can consume sights through our eyes, and especially these two, sight and sound, through entertainment media, we have so many stimuli available for us. And in some ways, never before in human, although entertainment has been a part of human society always, but never before in human history have we been exposed to so many stimuli so easily, so widely, just by clicking a few buttons. And with respect to consumption, it's one thing very important to know is that from a biological perspective, what we consume with our eyes affects our brain as much as what we consume with our tongue. Say now with the COVID situation, we are very careful that if somebody coughs, we use a mask. So we understand that dangerous stimuli might not just come through the food that we eat; it can come through the nose also. So similarly, the germs of sensuality, of sensual desires, they can come through our eyes also. So we are very careful about the food that we take in through our mouth, but we also need to be careful about what we are taking in through our eyes. So if we expose ourselves to sensually explicit stimuli, then that will agitate us, and that will also be a form of overconsumption, which will agitate and distract us from our spiritual life. So the way to deal with it is try to have as many Krishna stimuli as possible. So if you want music, has devotional music. If you would like to look at beautiful things, then look at the beautiful pictures of the deities in Krishna. And if you want to eat delicious food, make sure that it's offered to Krishna and eat that food in a regulated way. So have Krishna stimuli as much as possible. So bhakti in that sense is sensory spirituality. It is not depriving the senses, but directing the senses toward Krishna. And then there is Uddipan. We can find out those stimuli that are best for us. So for example, if we consider two circles, what we like to do and what is good for us, and find out what lies at the intersection of the two. So if we like music and we like bhakti, then find out bhakti music and use, or we like music and we know bhakti is good for us. So have bhakti music with you. That will be something which you can easily relate with. Now, Prajalpa is basically we could say gossip. Prajalpa has many different meanings, but gossip is one thing. So what we speak is more important than how much we speak. So a devotee, especially speaking about Krishna, may speak a lot, but that's speaking of which is positive. So what we speak, we need to check. There is one simple definition of gossip. When can we know when we are gossiping? It's when we hear something we like about someone we don't like. When we hear something we like about someone we don't like. Oh, that person does like that. And we won't say, I'm so happy to know this. Now I'm going to broadcast this to the whole world. That person is portrayed as if he's such a good person, but now I will tell what kind of person he is. So that is Prajalpa. So actually, it's important for us to avoid this kind of talking, because we are not only with Atyahara, we are consuming stimuli, but then by Prajalpa, we are producing that kind of sound vibration, which is only going to agitate us and agitate others. And in both ways, it will distract us from Krishna. So our words can be like walls or they can be like windows. If we speak about things which are like gossip, then they'll be like wall that will trap us in illusion. Or if we speak words which are about truth and ultimate truth, ultimately about Krishna, then they are like windows. They can show us the ultimate reality. So if at all we have to criticize someone, then don't criticize publicly, do it privately. Help others to save face. Just blaspheming and criticizing others, especially devotees, can be very damaging. And we should know that what we speak about others speaks about us. That means that if we are telling others the faults of A to B, then we may think that actually I'm just telling people what the true nature of A is. But B is not just thinking about A at that time, B is also thinking about us. Oh, that means right now you are exposing A, but tomorrow, if things go wrong between us, then you might expose me also. So, what we speak about others speaks about us. That means it tells people what kind of person we are. So, the more we criticize others, we don't just expose other people, we expose our own critical mentality to others. And then people will stay away from us because of that. So if at all we have a fault finding mentality, which is just finding faults with others, which is Prajalpa, then use it to find the faults of fault finding. Why I should not find faults, or what are the faults in fault finding? Use it for that purpose, and then we can desist from it. So the Bhagavad Gita also says apaishunam. In the 16th chapter, second verse, it states that a characteristic of a godly person is that they are averse to fault finding. Now, this is an important point. I may be going a little fast, and if at any time anything is not clear, please message me or something, let me know. But I'm trying to make sure that we cover ground and also have time for questions. So, this is Niyamagraha. Niyamagraha, so I try to explain this in terms of a four quadrant diagram. So, here on the x axis, you see the letter of the law, on the y axis, you see spirit of the law. So, for example, if somebody neither follows the letter nor the spirit, then what is happening? That person is whimsical, that person is going to be dangerous. Say, for example, if somebody is going on a road and they don't follow the road rules, if they take a U-turn or they remove the road stopper so that they can take a U-turn, that's risky for them, that's risky for others. So following neither the letter nor the spirit is whimsical, that's dangerous. Then there are some people who they stick to the letter of the law, and sometimes they get blinded about don't have sufficient awareness of the spirit of the law. So those people are conservative. So what happens with them is that this is the law, we have to do it. Now, okay, is the purpose being served? So for example, now normally we know that if on a road traffic, if ambulance is there, then the ambulance should be given way to go ahead. And that's the rule. But suppose an ordinary vehicle is serving as an ambulance. Ordinary vehicle is serving as an ambulance. Then if there's a cop and the cop is told that please let this go. He says, no, this is not ambulance, I cannot let this go. That would be conservative. The letter of the law is more important than the spirit. Now, liberal is, for them, the spirit of the law is very important, and the letter is not important at all, is not so important. Now, is that good? Well, not always good, because sometimes people may cut corners by that. So, the letter of the law also has a purpose. So, one simple way to understand the difference between liberals and conservatives is that suppose we are on a land, or say we bought a ranch, a big piece of land, and then while traveling through that land, we see a fence, or we see a small fenced area. Then the conservative thinks, both the conservative and the liberal, they observe the fence, but the conservative thinks, okay, this fence is here, let me find out why the fence is here. The liberal thinks the fence is here, I don't see any purpose for it, let me remove it. So now who is right? Well, you can't guarantee and one person is right. So the conservative is the way things are, don't change them too much. Liberal is the way things are, change them. If they don't make sense, change them. Well, they may not make sense to me right now, but maybe if I get more knowledge, I might be able to make sense. So right now I don't see anything inside that fence, but later on I might see that there is a small sapling, which is of a precious plant, and that needs to be protected. So now to be effective, we need to keep the letter and the spirit of the law both in mind. And Niyamagraha, this has two meanings. Niyam agraha. to just reject the rule agra, not accept it at all. So that is would be fall in the so Niyamagraha will fall in the whimsical category, will not follow the rule at all. And sometimes it might fall in the liberal category also. We don't follow the rules at all. And Niyamagraha, that means insisting on the rules without understanding their purpose. So that is sometimes being conservative, and that can become fanatical when you go to the other extreme. So on the conservative side, if you go down, there will be there's fanaticism, and on the liberal side, if we go up, there is relativism. That means everything is relative. Nothing is there are no universal principles at all. So for being effective, we need to have a balance of both. So for example, as say when we are practicing bhakti, say on certain days we fast. Fasting is good. But suppose somebody, when they fast, because of fasting, the past track record is that when they fast, they fall so sick that they can't do anything. They just lie in bed all day. And because of fasting, they fall so sick that it takes for them several days to recoup. Well, then there's no need. Okay, most people are fasting. So fasting has its utility. But for me, if it doesn't work, let me focus on the purpose. So best is if we can follow the letter and the spirit both. But we need to understand the spirit and make sure that we follow that spirit. We know that spirit. So sometimes if it's causing too much sickness, well, okay, better don't fast. Maybe you can eat a little bit, but make sure that you are growing, make sure that you are doing what it takes to grow. Okay. So then there is Janasangha. Janasangha is association. So association is basically the transfer of desires. Jana is people, Sangha is association. Jana Sangha is the association with people. Here it refers to, Jana refers to worldly minded people. So the association is seen through the transfer of desire. So here we have to understand there are two kinds of desires. There are linear and triangular desires. So linear desire is when we see a tempting object and we get the desire for it. Say an Indian sees a cricket match and says, I want to watch it. But say an Indian goes to Canada and sees ice hockey going on over there. Ice hockey, I don't feel very interested in that. But then that Indian, say, is a student and is a room partner, is a big ice hockey fan. And then they see that and they say, I want to know what is ice hockey. They get interested in that. So basically, some of our desires are linear, some of our desires are triangular. And when we are associating with worldly minded people, it's quite likely that our worldly desires will increase by that association. So we may get tempted just by seeing tempting objects. We may get tempted by associating with those who are enjoying those tempting objects. So by avoiding the association of worldly minded people, we prevent the triangularity of desires from trapping us. So we can't always change the people who are around us, but we can change the people who get inside us. Who get inside us means that we don't let their desires become our desires. So then Atyahara, Prayasa, Prajalpa, Niyamagraha, Janasangha, and the last item over here is Laulya. Laulya is greed or great desire. So Srila Prabhupada in his purport talks about this desire in three terms: Bhukti, Mukti, and Siddhi. And we could talk about in contemporary terms as pleasure, relief, and power. So if we can consider, the power of desiring is innate to us. But how we direct that power of desiring will vary from person to person. So for example, Bhukti, Mukti, and Siddhi. So for example, I want to enjoy this, I want to enjoy that, I want to enjoy that. That's the desire for pleasure, is Bhukti. Mukti means, it technically means freedom or liberation. But in our context, it can also mean relief. I just fed up with this, I want to get out of here. So no, that's not necessarily a spiritual desire. People want to say, just run away from the city to some some hillside or some peaceful place, that will give them some relief. But that if we get too excessively obsessed by these kind of desires, by any of these desires, pleasure, relief. Now, Siddhi technically means some mystical powers, some special powers that people may have. But it's the whole idea is power. So some people may have the power of speaking in such a way that they can persuade anyone about anything. Some people can persuade Eskimo to buy a refrigerator. So that's a power. That's a verbal power. There can be political power. There can be physical power. So now the point is that whichever power we talk about, that power, desiring power is not going to solve our problems. Ultimately, we need to desire Krishna. It is only when we desire Krishna that we'll grow spiritually. Can we disable and erase the okay, so, I think I can do this. Disable participant annotation and then so where do we direct our desire? Not toward pleasure, relief or trouble, but to the purpose of serving Krishna. Why? Because when we serve Krishna, we become purified, we become channels for Krishna to act through us, and that's how we become elevated. That's how we move toward elevation and ultimately toward liberation. So we can, we don't, Krishna consciousness means to desire for Krishna, to desire Krishna and to desire for Krishna. So devotional purpose, it helps us to do two things. It helps us to establish an inner connection with Krishna by which we find some inner enrichment. And then it also helps us to make an outer contribution on behalf of Krishna. So our family our family roles, our professional roles, our social roles, we act in all those so that we can contribute. And that's why we move forward. Inner connection, outer contribution. And when we have this desire to establish inner connection to make outer contribution, we'll find that the power of desire will work for us instead of against us. So this is the first verse. So I was planning to talk about at least two verses today. So let's go to the next verse. We will have a question answer session after the next verse rather than having it now, because then we can take all questions together. So till now I discussed about 6 factors that are conducive for bhakti, and now, or that 6 factors that are harmful for bhakti. Now let's look at 6 factors that are helpful for bhakti. This is utsaha nishchayat dhairyat tattat karma pravartanat sangatyagat sato vrittehe shadbir bhakti prasiddhyati. So utsaha nishchayat dhairyat. Utsaha, let's look at these. What are these 6 things? Sangatyagat sato vrittehe. Utsaha is enthusiasm. So there is patience and there is enthusiasm. Now there are 3 modes of material nature: goodness, passion and ignorance. Goodness is where we are calm, reflective. Passion is where we are hyperactive. Ignorance is where we are ultra passive, we're just passive. So one way to understand these 3 modes is that some people make things happen, some people watch things happen, and some people wonder what happened. So those who make things happen are in goodness. Those who watch things happen, they try to do one thing, but it leads to a whole reaction of things because they're not thought of it properly. They watch things happen. They are in passion. Those who wonder what happened, they are in ignorance. They're just not aware of anything. So now with this framework of the 3 modes, if we move forward and analyze, then what do we see over here? That here we will see that if there is no patience and no enthusiasm, that person is completely passive, not doing anything other. That person is in deep ignorance. If a person has patience but no enthusiasm, that means they are lazy. They are in the mode of ignorance. If a person has patience, if a person has no patience but enthusiasm, then what happens? Then they are in passion. Means they want to do things, but they want immediate results. When a person is in both passion, has both patience and enthusiasm, then that is in goodness. That is, okay, the person, I'll do my part and I will wait for things to work. That's patience. And then actually, if there is also, this is x-axis and y-axis, but if you also had a z-axis, that is utsaha nishchayat dhahiryat. So nishchayat. If you have that faith, also it becomes transcendental. It becomes not just goodness, but in transcendence. Let me explain how this works. So being enthusiastic, how do these three things fall together? Enthusiasm, faith, and patience. Any endeavor, if we consider, suppose somebody is gardening. Now, when we are gardening, we have to be enthusiastic to do our part. Now, we may have to clean the weeds, we have to clear the area, water sow the saplings, protect them, water them. So that's our part. And we need to be enthusiastic to do our part. In fact, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu considers bhakti to be like watering or gardening the heart. We want to garden the heart so that the flower and fruit of Krishna Prema can arise over there. So being enthusiastic is one aspect. So then what happens? I will do my part to the best of my ability. That is enthusiasm. But at the same time, we need something else. Just because I have started gardening the gardening yesterday, I can't expect today to have a fully blossomed garden over there. Things will take their own time to happen. I will wait for things to happen at their pace. We can't make a flower grow faster than its natural pace. It can be an artificial flower. We could just buy something and keep it in the garden, but that doesn't have the beauty of an actual flower. So similarly, on our spiritual path, we do our chanting, we do our hearing, we practice our sadhana bhakti, but our heart's purification. Can we silence the participants, please? So I will wait. Uh, our heart's purification, the manifestation of devotion for Krishna, that may take some time, and we should be ready to wait for it. I'll wait for things to happen at their pace. Then endeavoring with confidence means that I know that whatever things will happen, that whatever is meant to happen will happen. That it's like, okay, I'm doing the gardening and I'm ready to wait, but the right atmosphere, the right weather, the right temperature, the right rains, whatever is required, that will happen. So when we have these three things, there is our endeavor, there is the patience in terms of waiting for the time, and then faith that there is a higher plan for our life and that plan will work in its due course. These three can help us to move forward. Now, utsaha nishchaya dhairya tattat karma pravartanat. So tattat karma pravartanat refers to following the regulative principles. Now, why do we need to follow the regulative principles? Here it's important to see rules not as restrictions but as routes. So this is related with our earlier conservative and liberal. Say every time when we start driving on a road, now there are rules. Go on this side, don't go on that side. So now we could see that as a restriction. Why can't I go on that side? Who says it can't? What will happen if I go? Well, we'll soon find out what happens. If we are knocked over by some other vehicle, we will be pulled over by a cop. Now suppose we were going on a road that was completely foggy. So we can't see very clearly much that is ahead of us. But still, there's somebody telling us, okay, go straight, don't go left, don't go right. Then afterward they tell, okay, take a left turn, take a right turn. Now in that case, we are not able to see the territory ahead, but still we are following their guidance. Why? Because if it's GPS telling us like that, then we will drive that way because we know that that is a route to get to a particular place. So now in today's world, often there is a lot of opposition to the idea of rules. Why should I not do what I want for my enjoyment? So people often see rules as restrictive, but rules are simply routes to a better life. Rules are routes for our inner growth. So following rules is essential if we want to grow internally. If we don't follow the rules, we won't grow much. It's just like um, if somebody wants to play cricket. Now say a bowler is bowling and the bowler is not able to get the batsman out. So imagine if the bowler runs all the way across the pitch and then pushes the batsman aside and then knocks down the stump. He says, I knocked down the stump, you're out. That's not the way cricket is played. So the rules in a cricket match, they set up framework by which people can perform and people can excel. So rules are routes to a excellent and exciting cricket match. So similarly in life, rules, if they are understood properly, then they can be routes to a better life. So when scripture gives us certain regulative principles, do this, don't do this, if we see them as routes, then we will be able to move forward toward them positively without getting distracted. And then again, so this principle is considered so important that it's repeated, abandoning the association of non-devotees. So it's something similar to what was talked about earlier, Janasangha, and here it is, Sangha Tyagat. So what happens is, now if you consider another way to understand this is right now there is a COVID situation. So certain areas are designated as red zones. Certain areas may also be designated as restricted zones or something like that. So when that happens, it's important for us to recognize that if I am in a red zone, I have to be very careful whom I associate with. Now, when we say don't associate with non-devotees, that is not judging or condemning them. It is protecting ourselves. Just like say, if somebody is not wearing a mask and they come too close to us, and if they're strangers, then we may just politely request, please stay away, or we may move away from them. That is not to judge or condemn them, it is to protect us, to protect us from them. And sometimes it is to protect them from us also. So abandoning association of non-devotees is like that. Because we all are infected by worldly desires, lust, anger, greed, envy, and all these desires. And the more we associate, the more these desires will increase within us. That's why regulating the association is for our protection. And following previous acharyas. Why do we need to follow the previous acharyas? Because spiritual growth and especially devotion, they are more caught than taught. That means that acharya, the word acharya doesn't simply mean one who teaches. Acharya is one who acts in the right way, who demonstrates through their action what is to be done and what is not to be done. So devotion is more caught than taught. That means that when we see devotees, when we see the great spiritualists acting in real life, then we understand how things are to be done and how things are not to be done. So following rules is not a mechanical activity. Earlier I gave the example of traffic and we follow the rules, but traffic is relatively very simple as compared to navigating life's complexities. So while navigating life's complexities, we need models of how people have dealt with situations in the past. And based on that, we can learn how to deal with situations ourselves. So devotion is more caught than taught. And that's why we need to follow the previous acharya. This is tat karma pravartanat. In fact, the Bhagavatam also says that where does dharma reside? Dharma doesn't reside in any texts. Dharma resides in the actions of the great souls. Mahajano yena gataha sapantha. Learn from the great souls how we should act. So these are 6 principles that are favorable for bhakti. And now I will move on to the 4th text. So the first 3 texts talk about how to deal with people, how to deal with the world. The next 3 texts will talk about how to deal with devotees. So the first verse that I look at is now. So this is a verse from the Panchatantra, which Rupa Goswami has adopted over here. Adapted, we could say. Dati pratigrahanati guhyam akhyati puchyati. Bhungte bhojete chaiva shadvidam priti lakshanam. So the dati pratigrahanati. So that is that giving gifts, taking gifts, sharing our hearts and hearing others share their hearts, and offering prasad and taking prasad. So here they said priti lakshanam. Love is expressed through prasad or food, its gifts and words. So let's look at this one by one, and I'll focus especially on the last part of words. So now food, it basically prasad for us is, it's not just food, it is Krishna's mercy. So when we take prasad or when we offer prasad to others, we take prasad given by others, it's an exchange of love. It is Krishna's mercy shared and relished by devotees. And it is by sharing food with someone, then what happens is that we come closer to each other. And if you're sharing Krishna prasad with someone, then we come closer to each other and closer to Krishna. And that's how we grow in our lives. So now gifts, they are tangible reminders of affection. Gifts can be of various kinds, but the whole point of gifts is that they act as tangible reminders. So although we want to go beyond the world of sensory perception and we want to go to the world of Krishna, but presently we function in the world of sensory perception. And that's why if we can perceive something tangible with the senses, that is something which is very sweet for the heart. That grounds our sense that I am cared for, I am loved, I am valued, I am cherished. And then words. Now by words, what do we mean over this here? This is going much deeper. Earlier it talked about how we need to control our urge to speak. Then that was talked later in Prajalpa also. But now here it is said that when the way we speak our words, the way others hear our words, or the way we hear the words from others, that is something which can lead to a great bonding among people and among devotees. Now, for this opening of the heart to happen, these two things are vital: non-judgmentality and confidentiality. There could be many things in this, but often when we come to a spiritual path, it is very easy to start using standards as barriers, as as soon as somebody is not doing something in a standard way, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and you start condemning people because of that. That is very unhealthy. Instead, what we need to do is that don't be so judgmental. So in terms of a relationship, we can say that I am here, the other person is here. So we all have things that burden our hearts. Now sometimes it could be, can you please silence the participants?
Yes, Prabhu, I'm doing it.
Okay. So say the other, I'm here. Oh God. Let me know once it is done, then I'll resume.
Madhava Shivnath Prabhu, please mute yourself.
Okay. So the other person is here. Say I am here and the other person is here. So we all have things that burden our hearts, and then it's often, as long as it is inside, it crushes us. We want to share it with others, but we may be afraid of sharing it with others because we may be afraid of, what will this person think about me? Will be judged, will be condemned, they will look down upon me. So we need a certain level of non-judgmentality. And not just non-judgmentality, there is also non-judgmentality. It ensures that I don't hesitate to speak to the other person. But confidentiality means that the other person won't go and speak to the third person. So sometimes people, they just bend close to each other and say, "Can you keep a secret?" And when they're saying, "Can you keep a secret?" actually they are telling us that they can't keep a secret because somebody told it to them, and they are not able to keep it, so they're sharing it. They're telling it to us. So actually, we need to, if somebody speaks something to us in confidence, we need to keep that confidence. Confidentiality is vital. Otherwise, if what is spoken in private, when somebody is sharing their hearts, they speak it in public, then we will all, the other person will close down, and we will just lose the opportunity for proximity. We all want to be, in a trusting and trusted environment, a trustworthy environment. And how do we create the trustworthy environment? That is by keeping confidences. If what is spoken in private should be kept with us, not shared with others. Sometimes if it's a serious problem that we are not able to address effectively, and because of that we want to share with others, that's fine. But we need to take the permission from that person and then explain properly and then share and speak it only to a person who is responsible. And quite often, when we talk about our needs, there is, if somebody puts a pillow on somebody's head and starts choking them, we say, "What are you doing? Take off the pillow." You're choking that person to death. So that's one way of choking. But judgmentality is like a pillow. Sometimes if we are surrounded all around by judgmental people, then that becomes like a pillow which chokes us, not physically but emotionally. The worst loneliness is not when we are physically alone. The worst loneliness is when we are surrounded by people who don't understand us. Who don't understand us. So then we feel that I just can't express myself. If I express myself, people will misunderstand me. So what do? I stop expressing myself. That's a problem. So as to Prabhupada in his purport writes in this purport that the Krishna consciousness movement has been created. The Krishna conscious movement too is meant to nourish devotees through these sixfold exchanges. So these six exchanges, say we should have some friends, at least one friend with whom we can open our heart and speak candidly. And when others, and we should also try to be a friend like that. When others open their heart, we hear it. We hear it submissively. We hear it confidentially. When we do this, then we all can not just get good friends, but become good friends. And in some ways, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu demonstrated this in Jagannath Puri. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was on the planet for 48 years, out of which 24 years he was in Navadvip, 6 years he traveled across India, and the last 18 years of his life he just stayed in Puri. Now, what was he doing in Puri? You may say that there are so many people, by traveling he could have delivered so many people, but why didn't he do that? Actually, he was delivering people, but how? He was helping. There is the propagation of bhakti widely to many people, and there is the propagation of bhakti deeply. And that propagation of bhakti deeply is something which is important. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was demonstrating that. So he was based in Puri, and different devotees would come and meet him. And when those devotees would come and meet him, then he would have these sixfold exchanges. So, for example, when Raghunath Goswami came and met him, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him a Govardhan Shila. And for Raghunath Goswami, that was such an empowering gift, such an encouraging gift, that he felt that Lord Chaitanya has given me a place on Govardhan. He has not just given me the Govardhan Shila in my hands, but through that he has given me a place in Govardhan. Then he left Puri and lived in Govardhan for a long time, for the rest of his life after Lord Chaitanya departed. So, for a devotee, we don't need to give expensive worldly gifts, but something which indicates the devotion, the depth of thought that has gone in when we give that gift. That is very, very meaningful. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu shared his heart with Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. This is a very beautiful pastimes, and we don't have the time to go into details, but quickly to mention it, that when Rupa Goswami came to, Rupa Goswami was one of his prominent disciples, when he came to meet Lord Chaitanya, at that time, Lord Chaitanya called all his uh, associates over there, and he asked Rupa Goswami to read from his book. And when Rupa Goswami read from that book, he was so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was enlivened and his associates were enlivened. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was speaking his heart. This Rupa Goswami knows my heart. How does he know my heart? And it's one thing, say, if person B comes to, if say, some devotee, say, I'm an author, I'm an editor, I'm a reviewer. So if some devotee comes and shows their article or their book to me, I say, this is good. Maybe you can improve this, the book is good. Now that is one level of appreciation. But if I tell somebody else, hey, that devotee has written a good book, please read that, then that's a much higher level of appreciation. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does that in the presence of Rupa and Rupa Goswami. So he is sharing his heart's devotion, he's appreciating Rupa Goswami's devotion, and in that way, in that confidential exchange, he's bringing the hearts closer to each other. His heart and his followers' hearts are coming closer to each other. And then when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when the Bengali devotees would bring Prasad to him, for him, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would himself carefully honor that Prasad, and he would remember which devotee has brought what Prasad, and he would specifically appreciate the Prasad and send some message back. So it was not just food that was being eaten, but it was actually affection being offered through the medium of food, and that was being relished. So that's the extraordinary nature of the devotion that is demonstrated through these sixfold exchanges. And we all can look in our situations, how can I exchange, how can I have exchanges by which devotion can be deepened and strengthened. So most people come to spirituality not so much for spiritual purposes as for the purposes of community. Our modern society is quite lonely, and we want a sense of belonging to a whole bigger than ourselves. And we can belong when we understand that actually each one of us is a part of a whole bigger than ourselves. And when we have sixfold loving exchanges with devotees, then we can give them that feeling, and that's how we all can come closer to each other. So I'll summarize what I spoke, and then we can have some questions. So I spoke today about the 6 things that damage bhakti and 6 things that enhance bhakti. And then I talked about the sixfold loving exchanges between devotees. The 6 things that enhance bhakti, that damage bhakti, we talked about overconsumption of worldly stimuli. Now, stimuli that go into our eyes can be as contaminating as, say, eating contaminated food. Then I talked about over endeavor. It's like we all want to grow, but we don't want our growth to be like cancerous growth. Then Atyahara, Prajalpa. So when we speak, don't criticize others publicly, and try to avoid criticizing others. Avoid gossip. Gossip means when we hear something we like about someone we don't like. Prajalpa, Niyamagraha. I discussed elaborately about that 4-quadrant diagram, that if we reject the rules entirely, that is Niyamagraha, that's bad. If we stick only to the letter without understanding the purpose, the spirit, that's conservative. If we focus on the spirit and neglect the letter entirely, that's also unhealthy. People can be liberal that way. and that can be good. So who is good, who is right, the liberals or conservatives? It depends. What is the context? What is the, I best is we follow the rule in letter and spirit, but a greater deference towards the letter of the rule characterizes conservatives, and a greater preference for the spirit characterizes liberals. Ideal is to manage both. And then we discuss Janasangha Laulyam Cha. Janasangha is association. How by our association desires will develop. Sangat Sanjayate Kamaha, triangular desires. And that's why we need to avoid those people who will contaminate, who will fill us with worldly desires. And then we discuss about laulya. We all have a power of desire. What do we do that? We seek not pleasure, not relief, not power, but we seek purpose. We seek the purpose of serving Krishna. So we desire to connect with Krishna entirely, internally, and contribute toward Krishna externally. And that way we all can move forward in our lives. And after that, I talked about the 6 things that benefit Utsaha Nishchaya Dhairyat. So we discussed that 4 quadrants, that if there is no enthusiasm and there is no patience, that is in dark ignorance. If there's only patience without enthusiasm, that is ignorance. If there's only enthusiasm without passion, that is there's only enthusiasm without patience, that is passion. Enthusiasm and patience both together is goodness, and when there is transcendence associated with it, that's even better. When we have faith in Krishna. We discussed the example of gardening for that purpose, that we need to do our part, but we also need to wait for the flowers to blossom, and we need faith. And then also we discussed the remaining 3 principles: Sangha Tyagat, Sato Vritte, and Tat Tat Karma Pravartana. So rules are routes, especially if you're going on a foggy road, then following the rules means we can't see clearly, but we know that this is the path to a destination. That's why we follow rules. And then Tat Tat Karma Pravartanat, devotion is more taught than caught. Is more caught than taught. That's why we need living examples and learn from those living examples. And then I talked about the 6-fold loving exchanges through words, through food, and through gifts. And especially I focused on words. To create a trusting environment, there has to be non-judgmentality and confidentiality. Then people can open their hearts and we all can come closer to each other. And I discussed Lord Chaitanya's examples of how he created such an environment. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So there is a question. Oh, okay. It's more of a comment than a question. They found your session, Kamal Prabhu, very inspiring, and thanking you. And obviously, he loved the examples that you gave. So what I would suggest is that if anybody would have a question, you could raise your hand and you could directly ask the question from Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. Since I have not received in writing any of the questions, please feel free to do so. So, Murlidhar Prabhu, please ask your question, please. And then Nitya Narasimha Prabhu after that. And I will, just one sec. Yeah, now you can unmute yourself, Murlidhar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam. It was a very enlightening lecture, Prabhuji. And just I have only one question. In the spiritual life, how to find the true friend to open up our heart? It's always challenging. So we are growing in the same group. In the same group itself, another devotees are not trustable, and we are facing few issues. How to overcome these issues, and how to find the true friend? Like we have to wait for that, or is there any?
Yeah, it's a tough thing. How to find a true friend? I think that it requires time, it requires persistence, and it's like suppose we want to swim, then we we go near the bank, and then we maybe put our foot in the water and see how cold it is. If it's unbearably cold, then we we don't go in. If it is manageably cold, we go in. So like that, take small steps. So maybe share something small with a person and then see what happens. We share something small and they accept. That's good. They accept means they don't judge and condemn us. They don't broadcast our faults to others. Then we can share something more. And usually friendship doesn't follow rules. That means it is not that because I am say staying in a XYZ place, so I should be able to find a friend in the XYZ place only. Yes, at a functional level, we shouldn't be hostile towards others. We should have in general, it is good to be friendly with all devotees. In fact, a devotee wants to have a friendly disposition toward everyone, what to speak of devotees. But it's one thing to be friendly and it's another thing to have a deep friend. So for that kind of deep friendship, it requires that we go through life and we see our challenges and we see how others respond during challenges. Sometimes it may be that there are many, as it is said, many people will laugh with us when we are happy, but the people who are there when we are crying, they are the people who are who are who are more likely to be genuine friends. So we should never lose faith in the principle of friendship. It is Krishna it is the scriptures who are telling us that we should have friends, we should be friends, we should have friends. And sometimes it may be that we open our heart to someone and that person betrays us, and then we feel devastated. And naturally, we'll go through some phase of introspection and maybe withdrawal. But then we need to re-emerge again and become wiser. So we learn from experience. So I would say it's basically intelligence and experience. Intelligence to just by being around people, we can make out. It's like so our chemistry matches with some people. It's not just physical chemistry. Here I'm talking about it's emotional chemistry, it's intellectual chemistry. It's there are so many aspects to it. So for some people, you just talk maybe I talk 5-10 minutes, and you feel, hey, I like the way this person thinks. I get what they are saying, and they get what we are saying. So the word that is used is sajatiya asha. That means the same category of desire, the same mentality, the same kind of, by mentality, it's not a negative connotation, but the same way of thinking or a similar way of thinking. So we can identify maybe 2 or 3 people with whom we feel that, I think I can connect with this person. And we shouldn't seek friendship simply based on extraneous factors. Oh, this person is a very influential person. Let me connect with this person. This is the person, big person. Yes, we want to have good relationship with everyone, but we need to look at with whom we can connect and focus on that. And once we connect with them, we move forward by that. So if you have 2-3 people like that, then invest time in that relationship. Call them, talk with them, and make time to spend with them. Be there when they help, when we need help, when they need help. And the universe is ultimately reciprocal. Sometimes we may invest a lot in one relationship and we may not get much from that relationship, but in some other relationship, we might get much more than what we invested. So we need to be open also. So I think it's intelligence to see with whom we are likely to match, and then also experience to see how things move forward. Does it answer your question?
Hare Krishna, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. Thank you so very much. We've got a few questions on the chat and we have few raised hands. So I'm going to have Jugal Prabhu first, then I'll just tell you what I'm going to. So Jugal Prabhu, then Nitya Narasimha Prabhu, Sunaja Mataji. These are, and after that, there are 2 questions by Hina Mataji and Sanjay Khetri Prabhu. So we've got 5, and I think we would try to take these 5 questions in the next 20 minutes. Jugal Prabhu, over to you.
Yes, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, thank you very much for the wonderful lecture. As always, you must be used to getting this compliment after every lecture. Uh, you talked about this being non-judgmental. In this being non-judgmental, there is an internal aspect to it and an external aspect to it. So, external is how you manifest your non-judgmental nature with others,
Yeah.
then internalizing it in the sense that if you're actually not non-judgmental from within, it can trouble you and cause harm to yourself. So how do you actually handle this, and what's the nature we have to develop?
Okay. So, what about the two internal and non-external aspects of non-judgmentality? I, basic principle I would focus here first is that we do need to make judgments. Just like, as I said, that if somebody is sick, and now we need to make a judgment and decide, I don't want to go too close to that person, or at least I don't want to go unprotected close to that person. So if we don't make judgments, we will rush into danger and we will create trouble for ourselves. Now, judgments are usually about situations. Being judgmental, or it's about situations and appropriateness of particular people in particular situations. So judgmentality is like fixing a label on a person, and it's almost like fixing a permanent label on a person. That is unhealthy. So, for example, if we are in a responsible leadership position, then we need to check. If I am going to entrust a particular service to someone, are they likely to do it or not? Or this person is too forgetful, I can't give such a service to this person. That's making a judgment. Now, being judgmental means as soon as we see that person, the first thought that comes in our mind is forgetful person, or this person is a loafer, this is a glutton, or whatever, like that. So what can we do about this? It is in the Upanishads it is said that, so for the external, for the becoming internal non-judgmental, one thought that the Upanishads give is, whenever you meet anyone, let your first thought about that person or any person be positive. And how can we do that? That is, one way is by spiritual vision. See that this is a part of Krishna. This person is a precious part of Krishna. So if we understand that this person is so precious that Krishna is present in this person's heart, then that's amazing, isn't it? So that way, now of course that person may be having various conditionings and whatever, and I have to see my condition and deal with appropriately. But if that seems too abstract, then especially if we have a tendency to be judgmental with some people, then put in some effort and write down some good qualities of theirs. And especially if we know that we are going to have a difficult interaction with somebody, or a difficult conversation with someone, and that our judgmentality is going to come into the picture over there. See, if we just go through life with a little bit self-observation, we can also easily know which are the situations when we are more vulnerable, when we are likely to get provoked, and we can prepare for those. So then if before meeting with either difficult people, or especially before having difficult discussions with difficult people. Now again, when I'm saying difficult people, it's not that that person might be difficult. It might be difficult for us to deal with that person. But before that, write down some positive attributes of that person. And sometimes our judgmentality might be so much that we might not see any positive attributes. So especially when we become a part of a spiritual organization with standards, then it's very easy. Oh, this person is a meat eater. Well, okay, this person might be a meat eater, but that person might be polite. That person might be actually generous. That person might be having other qualities. So yes, that is there. But when I'm interacting with that person, how useful is that label? Well, unless they are inviting me or insisting that I come and eat at their food and I eat that kind of food, well, whether the person is a meat eater or not, that doesn't make much difference to me practically. So why keep that label in my mind? What am I interacting with this person for, and what do I need to be aware of at that time? So that way, if we prepare a little bit, then that inner judgmentality can also be avoided. So we can make judgments when it's necessary according to time, place, circumstance, but we can avoid fixing permanent labels on people in our mind. Does it answer your question? Okay, there is one question, or rather that twice two people have asked the same question. Hina Adaji and Sanjay Prabhu.
That's right.
So it's when I said non-association with non-devotees, how can we do that? Say when we have non-devotees in our family itself, or if we have, or how do we grow a community if we have non-devotees? So I'm sharing my screen here to illustrate something here. I hope you can see this slide. This is, how do I present it? Okay. So here, you see when we are relating with someone, the Krishna is here, we are here, then the other person is here. So now, if we consider these three things, between us and Krishna, that is our relationship with our relationship with Krishna. So we can say this is our most important relationship. This is the eternal relationship. We don't want to injure or destroy this relationship. That's one. Then there is our relationship with the other person. Say now, if they are a family member, if they're a close relative, close friend, that's also important. That is two. And then there is three is their relationship with Krishna. So when we are talking about non-association with non-devotees, the key thing is we don't want to associate with them in a way that damages this one relationship, our relationship with Krishna. So while interacting with them, we don't want this relationship to get hurt. Now that requires every relationship, we can always have some boundaries. In general, in today's world, if we give people their space, they will give us our space. Say for example, if we are in a family where somebody else is eating meat, then now we say, I don't want to eat meat. It's very, very rare that somebody will forcibly open our mouth and stuff meat into our mouth. But if we start telling that, you should not eat meat, then it will become a problem. So then what do we do? Now this meat is just one example. It can apply to many places, many things. So what happens? Sometimes when we are relating with others, we are anxious for the third to develop. Say we are devotees, we have developed a relationship with Krishna, and we want them to develop a relationship with Krishna. But in trying to get them to develop, okay, what happened here? Sorry. In trying to get them to develop their relationship with Krishna, that is three, we end up injuring the second. So we force the other person too much. Do this, don't do this, don't do this. And then when we try to force them to develop their relationship with Krishna, that puts a strain on our relationship with them. And when that strain comes on our relationship with them, then that strains our relationship with Krishna also. So I repeat this, that if we force others to say not eat meat, and then they start saying you are too, you're becoming too spiritual, you're not doing your family responsibilities, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And then not only does our relationship get spoiled, but then they may pressurize us they may interfere with our relationship with Krishna also. So we need to get our priorities right. See, our relationship with Krishna is number one priority, and the basic devotional activities, we want to make sure that we do them. And the second priority is our relationship with them. So it is, if we have a relationship, it's not that we just reject that relationship, but just because they are not related with Krishna. But and the third is their relationship with Krishna. So keep things progressive. So if ideally is that if they are also devotees, we are also devotees, and we all move together. But if that is not happening, then keep the two separate. Keep your relationship with Krishna and keep your relationship with them also, and move forward. And now with respect to building a community, yes, among non-devotees, see, sometimes there are categories, and some categories are useful and some categories are too large to be useful. So for example, among non-devotees, it's a very big category, not just in terms of number of people in that, but also in terms of mentality. There are some non-devotees who are receptive to bhakti. There are some non-devotees who are not very interested in bhakti. There are some non-devotees who may be averse to bhakti. So if we are having some kind of relationship, we maintain that relationship. If we are developing a relationship, we try to develop a relationship with those who are at least somewhat receptive to bhakti, and then we can share it with them. So non-association with non-devotees, essentially what it means is, don't associate in a way that damages your relationship with Krishna. Is all non-associate non-devotees going to damage our relationship with Krishna? No, not necessarily. Say if we are working in office and we associate with people over there, but it's a functional association. And if they are spiritual receptive, we can share. If they're not spiritual receptive, we'll just move on and discuss other things, what is required over there. So that way, by understanding the purpose and the priority, the purpose of the principle non-associate non-devotees is, don't let your relationship with Krishna get damaged. And the priority is relationship with Krishna, relationship with the other person, and then their relationship with Krishna. Then we can balance things properly. Does it answer your question?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Okay, so
thank you, Prabhu. That was very insightful. Thank you so much.
Sorry?
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
thank you.
I said thank you so much, Prabhu. It was very insightful. Thank you so much.
Is there any last question?
So we have Nitya Narasimha Prabhu. You want to ask your question? And we have Sunaja Mataji. If we can take both in the next 10 minutes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Nitya Narasimha Prabhu, speak on.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. My question is, persons who follow, what will happen to them, Prabhuji?
Sorry, I
Can
can't
you speak
hear.
again?
My question is, Prabhuji, persons who do not follow previous acharyas, what will happen to them?
Okay. So those who don't follow the previous acharyas, what happens to them? Well, it depends on how far they are going away from following. It's like if I have a map and that map has been drawn by somebody who has traversed that path. Now, if I don't follow that map, what am I doing? Am I just going, say, 1 degree away from it, 10 degrees away, 90 degrees away, or 180 degrees away? So it will depend on how much one is not following. So for example, now bhakti itself is practiced in somewhat differently in different traditions. So somebody in the, say, Sri Vaishnava tradition, or somebody in the some other Vaishnava tradition, they may not follow bhakti exactly the way our acharyas in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition have taught. That's fine, but they're following some other acharyas. And we could even say that every field has its acharyas. So somebody who's in medicine, if they want to do expert in medicine, they follow those who are the ideals in medical practice, and like that in various fields. But the important thing is that if somebody doesn't follow, why are they not following, and to what degree are they deviating? That will determine their result, their destination. If somebody is still practicing bhakti, but not exactly following the rules that are specified, then to the extent they are deviating from the rules, there will be problems. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
So we'll have the last question of the session today from Sunaja Mataji. Sunaja Mataji, unmute yourself.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for a very enlightening, a lot of messages we got from this class, and it is very useful for us in our real life. Like Prabhuji told that we have to be very careful with like Prajalpa type of people and association with good type of people and all. But in many cases, like those who are especially working, they will be spending like 8 to 10 hours in work environment, like the atmosphere, where the people, or it can be a combination of things are causing like disruption to us. And if we step back, and then they will say that, okay, we are not socially like not in the environment. So Prabhuji, can you just suggest some ways to survive or handle such toxic environment? At the same time, we can go along with our like spiritually, and it will not affect us.
Good point. So say we have to spend several hours every day, 8 to 10 hours with our professional colleagues, and we need to also socialize with them.
Yes.
But we don't want to be affected by the toxic environment. What can we do? See, so like I earlier said that devotee and non-devotee are two big categories. Within non-devotees also there are many different people with different mentalities. So similarly, spiritual and material. Material is also a very big category. Within the material, there is the sensual. Within the material, there is the perverted. Within the material, there is also the human. So we could say that is goodness, passion, and ignorance. So, say for example, sensual means talking about movies and stuff like that. Then perverted could be really like backbiting and politicking and and even worse things can happen, using foul words and all those things. But there is a human connection that can be established. Human connection means that at a level of sattva, when we are talking with people, that we don't have to isolate ourselves from people completely. We can connect with them as human beings and see which of their interests are somewhat compatible with our devotional interests. So in general, in a workplace, people socialize, but usually it's not like a very deep or prolonged socializing. The primary consideration is competence. If you are good at our work, we are valued for that. But of course, beyond competence, some amount of networking is required so that we are well connected with people who take various decisions. So just being courteous, being connected at a human level. Being connected at a human level means, say for example, if they have some problems and we help them. It could be a professional issue, it could be a personal issue. Then if we are there to help them, and even if we are not there with them when they're socializing and partying and all those things, but when they need, when we can be of some help to them and they need help, then if we are there, that's also a way to develop the relationship. So we could also find out, even among material subjects, there could be some subjects which are not really contrary to devotion. Say for example, discussing about, say now, the health trends with respect to COVID or something like that. That's a human concern. We can say that's mundane. Now we don't want to over discuss that and exhaust ourselves emotionally or mentally. But still, we could find out how we can interact with people at a human level. And sometimes when, like I said, we shouldn't be judgmental. Sometimes we put a label on people and then we can't see them beyond that label. And then it becomes a significant problem if we start reducing people to the label. So are people non-devotees? Well, from one perspective, every soul is a part of Krishna. So every soul is a potential devotee. Now, for some people, their devotion may be very, very deeply buried, and it may not be in our power to unearth their devotion, but that's fine. We can still see how we can connect with them at a human level. So most people are quite busy. They could say that everybody has a movie going on in their head, and in that movie inside their head, they are the stars, and everybody else is an extra. I'm not saying this to demean the important, to downplay the importance of relationships, but we don't have to worry too much about what other people will think about me. Yes, so if somebody is an extra in a movie, how much do we notice the extras? It's only when the extras do something extraordinarily good or extraordinarily bad, then we notice. Otherwise, we don't even notice it. So we don't have to be like a absolutely odd person out. Say if there is some socializing occasion, so we could just be there and maybe have some. If everybody is drinking, we can have a non-alcoholic drink, some fruit juice or something like that, and be discreet. It is generally when we start thrusting our faith on them, or we start criticizing what they are doing, that's when we stand out. So if we like with a big show, we walk out of the get together with arguing with our philosophy or arguing with some practice, then again we stand out. But if we give people their space, then it's not that people will intrude in our space. People also give us our space. And if we are courteous, if we connect at the human level, then we can sustain those relationships also, as much as is required for us. Does it answer the question?
Yes, Prabhuji, yeah, it's clear. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much for your thoughtful questions and for this opportunity, sir. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. And I want to inform everyone that we will have the same session on the balanced verses next Saturday at 7 p.m. Oman time, 8:30 p.m. Indian time. And you can also subscribe to the channel that Chaitanya Charan Prabhu has on YouTube. And he has something called the Monks Podcast. So please try to go to his YouTube channel, Chaitanya Charan, and there are some very interesting talks, very enlivening talks that he has, which he labels as the Monks Podcast. So on that note, we thank you all for your participation. Good night and have a restful sleep. And we will certainly look forward to having your association next Saturday. And Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, thank you again for your association and very insightful classes that you give. Not only insightful, there is a lot for us to be putting them into practice. So they're very practical. Thank you very much. And we look forward to having you again next Saturday. Hare Krishna, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhyaivacha, Patitanam Pavnebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai.
Yeah.
Jai.